Hey guys, so here's the answers to the review for your short quiz tomorrow. So number 1 on your quiz looks very similar to number 1 on this worksheet. So let's go ahead and solve it. So the first thing you want to do is distribute this -3 through. So it's going to give us -6x plus 15 plus 6 equals, and then distribute the 5. So it's going to give us 20x minus 5. Okay, and if we combine like terms on the left side here, we know 15 plus 6 is 21. That equals 20x minus 5. Then moving the x's to the same side, so let's go ahead and maybe add 6x to both sides here. You can move the 20x over if you like. So you get 21 equals 26x minus 5. And then adding 5 to both sides, 21 plus 5 is 26, so you get 26 equals 26x, and dividing both sides by 26 gives you that x equals 1. So look, if you're able to do something like that, you should be totally fine on the quiz tomorrow, okay? For number 2, this is a good thing to know also. It's not a linear question like this on your quiz tomorrow, but this is good to know. So when you have a denominator, the best thing that you can do is try to get rid of it. So the common denominator here for the 4 and the 2 is 4. So I'm going to go ahead and multiply everything by 4. So I'm clearing the denominator, right? So notice here, the 4's cancel out. I'm left with a 3n. Minus 2 times 4 is 8. And then on here, it doesn't look like the denominator cancels out, but it actually does. 2 goes into 4 twice. So I'm left with a 1 times 2, which is 2. And then I'm also left with the n, which is a 2n. And then plus 7 times 4 is 28. Now, if I add 8 to both sides, actually, let's move the 2n over first. Subtract 2n from both sides. That's going to give you 1n minus 8 equals 28. And then if I add 8 to both sides, I'm going to get that n equals 36. All right? Okay, so that takes care of number 1 on your quiz tomorrow. Okay? Now, number 2 on your quiz tomorrow is going to have instructions say solve the quadratic equations by factoring. So on this one, you definitely want to make sure that everything equals 0 before you factor. Okay? If you don't have it equal to 0, you're going to mess up and it's not going to come out right. So number 3 is equal to 0. This is just the greatest common factor. So if I take out a d, I'm going to be left with a d minus 5. And then setting both of these equal to 0 is going to give you d equals 0 as answer number 1, and then d equals 5 as answer number 2. Okay? For number 4, okay, again, it's equal to 0, so I'm good to go there. This is a big star, so let's go ahead and put that together. So on top, I'm going to have 4 times 4 is 16. On the bottom, I'm going to have a negative 17, and that would be negative 16 and negative 1. Divide by your leading coefficient. And then negative 16 divided by 4 is negative 4. And then the negative 1/4 does not reduce. So my 2 factors are going to be a minus 4 times a minus 1/4 equals 0. And then setting each factor equal to 0, you're going to get a equals 4 and a equals 1/4. Okay? Hey, that's a really good one to know. Won't say much more about that one. All right, number 5. Is it equal to 0? No, it's not. So let's move the 9n over. So it's going to give me 9 cubed minus 9n equals 0. And now that's a greatest common factor. So if I pull out an n, I'm going to be left with n squared minus 9 equals 0. But hey, n squared minus 9 factors 2. That factors to a difference of 2 squares. So it's n plus 3 times n minus 3 equals 0. And now setting each of these factors equal to 0, okay, this one's going to give you n equals 0. This one is n equals negative 3. And then this one is n equals positive 3. Okay, you guys, we're only doing quadratics tomorrow, so I wouldn't worry too much about number 5, but still it's a good one to see. Okay, more like that stuff we'll do like later on tomorrow. Okay, number 6. It's not equal to 0, so I need to make that equal to 0. So it's going to be x squared minus x minus 12 equals 0. Okay, then a big X I have two numbers that multiply to make negative 12 and add to make negative 1. That would be negative 4 and 3. So this factors to x minus 4 times x plus 3 equals 0. Setting each factor equal to 0, you're going to get x equals 4 and x equals negative 3. Okay, so you guys, so far we've got two questions on the quiz. Question number 1 looks very similar to number 1. Question number 2 is a factoring question. I would look at number 4, okay? Now, solving the following quadratics by completing the square. There's one question like this on there, and you guys, the numbers aren't quite as big, okay? So when you're completing the square, the first step is to move the constant term to the right. So you're going to get x squared plus 2x equals 120, okay? Now, because you're completing the square, I'm going to draw a square on the left and a square on the right, and the way to do that is to take your middle coefficient there, the 2, you're going to take that, divide it by 2, and square it. So 2 divided by 2 is 1. 1 squared is 1. So that's what's going to complete the square. Okay? Now, what do I have on the left-hand side? If you were going to do a big X on this, this would factor to x plus 1 times x plus 1, or x plus 1 squared. If I did that too fast, check it out. I need two numbers that multiply to make 1 and add to make 2. That would be 1 and 1. Remember, you know that you did it right if these numbers are the same. And this equals 120 plus 1 is 121. Now, taking the square root of both sides, you're going to get x plus 1 equals, don't forget your plus or minus, 121. And because, oops, what is the square root of 121 though? Let's do that. That's actually 11, right? Because that came out pretty, which it very well may tomorrow, okay, this actually gives you two equations. It gives you x plus 1 equals 11, or it gives you x plus 1 equals negative 11. So here, if I subtract 1, you're going to get x equals 10. Here, if I subtract 1, I'm going to get x equals negative 12. Okay? Hey, numbers are a little bit smaller tomorrow, but very similar to what's on your quiz for completing the square. Now, if you want to do a couple more to practice with, let's look at number 8. If you move the 11 over, you're going to get x squared minus 8x equals negative 11. Right? Draw your little boxes so you can complete the square. Okay? And again, I'm going to look at that middle term. I'm going to take half of it, divide it by 2, and square it. So 8 divided by 2 is 4. 4 squared is 16. So I'm adding 16 to both sides. And then on the left-hand side, if I do a big X here, I need two numbers that multiply to give me 16 and add to make negative 8. That would be negative 4 and negative 4. Again, if these are the same, you probably did it right. And then this factors to x minus 4 times x minus 4, or x minus 4 squared. And then 11 plus 16 is 5. Okay? Again, taking the square root of both sides. These cancel, so you get x minus 4 equals plus or minus the square root of 5. Don't forget your plus or minus. And then square root of 5 is not a pretty number, so let's just add 4 to both sides. And that's going to give you x equals 4 plus or minus the square root of 5. Okay, this time you do not need to break it up into two separate equations because we don't know what the square root of 5 is. It's not a pretty number. All right, you guys, for number 9. Now, this one actually comes out imaginary, so I don't want you to worry about that. We didn't do imaginary numbers yet, so go ahead and cross off number 9. And number 10, you guys, is not a good candidate for completing the square because I have a 2 in front of the x squared. This is something that I would ask maybe like on a quadratic formula question, so don't worry about that. Hey, if you're set with number 7 or 8, you can do number 3 on your quiz tomorrow. Very similar, okay? All right, solve the following using the quadratic formula. Now, again, with this one, just like factoring, everything has to equal 0. If it does not, it will not work, okay? So let's go ahead and make this equal to 0. Let's move the 18 back over. So it's going to be r squared minus 7r minus 18 equals 0, okay? Now, label what your a, b's, and c's are. So the a is the number in front of the r squared, which is just 1. The b is the number in front of the r, which is a negative 7, and the c is just the constant, which is negative 18. So again, where did I get those from? A, b, c, okay? Now, how do I plug this in? Remember, the quadratic formula is the following. X equals negative b plus or minus the square root of b squared minus 4ac all over 2a. Okay, so plugging that in. So we're going to get x equals. Now the first tricky part here is this negative b. If I want to make b negative, that means I'm making it negative again. So it's actually going to be a positive 7 plus or minus the square root of b squared. So it's going to be negative 7 squared minus 4 times the a is 1 and the c is negative 18. And that's all over 2 times a, which is 1. Okay, you guys, this will give you a lot of points because it shows me that you know what a, b, and c are and you know how to plug it in and you know what the quadratic formula is. Okay, so simplifying this is 7 plus or minus the square root of negative 7 squared here. That's a nice little 49. Okay, and then I also have this negative times a negative, which is a positive. And then 4 times 1 is 4, and 4 times 18. Hey, if you don't know what that is, just work it out, right? 8 times 4 is 32, carry the 3. 4 times 1 is 4, plus 3 is 7, so it's 72. And then it's all over 2 times 1, which is 2. Now, let's keep simplifying. What's 49 plus 72? Well, if I add that up, 7 plus or minus the square root of, I think that's 121. Ooh, that comes out nice. Okay, because what is the square root of 121? The square root of 121 is 11. So this is 7 plus or minus 11 over 2. Now look, it came out pretty. That means I need to look at two different things, right? Let me do a different color. This right here would either be 7 plus 11 over 2, or it would be 7 minus 11 over 2. So if I do the first one, 7 plus 11, that's 18 over 2, which is 9. So there's one answer. And 7 minus 11 is negative 4 over 2, which is negative 2. So your two answers would therefore be 9 and negative 2. Okay, let's see what we got. Number 12, quadratic formula. It equals 0. That's great. Okay, so this is your A, this is your B, this is your C. You can even write it down here. A equals 3, B equals negative 7, and C equals negative 2. Now, plugging it into the quadratic formula. So you're going to get x equals negative b. Again, a negative and a negative is going to make a positive, plus or minus the square root of b squared minus 4 times the a is 3, the c is negative 2, and then all over 2 times a. Okay? Now, simplifying this, you're going to get 7 plus or minus the square root of negative 7 squared, that's 49. Okay, again, I've got this negative times a negative, which is a positive. And then 4 times 3 is 12. 12 times 2 is 24. All over, and then I've got this 2 times 3, which is 6. All right, then we get x equals 7 plus or minus 49 plus 24. I believe that's a 73. Which is actually kind of nice because do we know what the square root of 73 is? I don't. It's a gross number and it doesn't break down. So guess what? That is my answer. Okay, so you guys, question number 4 is a quadratic formula question. You just plug it in. It is not bad at all. Okay, now 13 and 14, please don't worry about. We will do this later. That is not on your quiz tomorrow. I just want to focus on that. But I do want to focus on like 15 and 16. Okay, your last question, number 5 on the quiz, is very similar to either 15 or 16. Okay, you could do 17 and 18 if you want, but they're more linear equations. These guys are a little bit harder. So what you want to do here is first, you want to look at all your denominators and ask yourself, can I factor any of them? Yes, you can. You can factor this first one, right? So that is a GCF. So that would factor to 3 over x times x plus 3. And then plus x plus 2 over, the x plus 3 does not factor, so I'm kind of stuck there. And the x also does not factor. Now, I need to find the common denominator here. To find a common denominator, see what they have in common. So they both have an x here, so that's part of my common denominator. And there's 2x plus 3. So your common denominator is going to be x times x plus 3. And what do you do with that? You multiply every single term by x times x plus 3. Okay, x times x plus 3, and x times x plus 3. Okay, once you do that, things should cancel and you should be left with no more denominators. So look, all of this goes away, leaving you with just a 3. The x plus 3 goes away, leaving you with a x squared plus 2x if you distribute that. And then that equals, these cancel out, leaving you with just an x plus 3. Okay, now what do I have left over? Well, one thing that I see is that there are 3's on both sides. If I subtract those 3's, that's going to go away, right? And then you guys moving this over, I'm going to get x squared. If I subtract x from both sides, right, it's going to go away. So you're going to get x squared plus x equals 0. Okay, now what can I do? I can GCF this, right? Take out an x, that's going to be left with x plus 1 equals 0. And then, here, let me do it on the side here, x times x plus 1 equals 0. And then setting each factor equal to 0, you're going to get that x equals 0 or x equals -1. Now, before you get all excited and box one of those answers or both of them, you need to make sure that they both work. Okay, if I take 0 and plug those in here, 0 plus 3 is 3. I can't plug it into there. If I plug in x equals 0, I can't divide by 0, so that's going to be a bad one. But if I plug in -1, -1 plus 3 is okay. If I plug in a -1 over there, 1 over -1 is also okay. So that would be my only answer. You have to make sure that those excluded values are not included. All right, same thing with number 16. Look at your denominator. See if you can factor any of these. Okay, so if I look at the first denominator, this is just big X. So that's going to factor 2b plus 3 times b plus 2. And then this is b minus 1 over b plus 2, which does not factor. And then this is 7 over b plus 3, which again does not factor. Okay, now again, what is my common denominator going to be? So the common denominator, look, they both have a b plus 2. And they both have a b plus 3. So your common denominator is b plus 2 times b plus 3. And I'm going to multiply all of these by it. b plus 2, b plus 3. This one times b plus 2, b plus 3. And this one times b plus 2, b plus 3. All right, let's see what we can cancel out. So the b plus 3 goes away, the b plus 2 goes away, leaving me with just a 3. Then plus the b plus 2 goes away, leaving me with a b minus 1 times b plus 3. I'm going to have to FOIL that out. This one's kind of gross. The b plus 3's cancel out, leaving me with a 7b plus 14. Okay, now let's go ahead and FOIL this out. So b times b is b squared. Then 3b minus 1b is 2b. And -1 times 3 is -3. And that equals 7b plus 14. Okay, I also noticed that the 3's cancel out here, right? Let's make this thing equal to 0. So how about if we subtract 7b from both sides? So it's going to leave me with b squared minus 5b. And then you guys, that equals 14. Remember, I want this to equal 0, so let's move that over to the other side, giving me b squared minus 5b minus 14 equals 0. Now, this is also a big X, so I need two numbers that multiply to give me -14 and add to give me -5. That would be -7 and 2. So this factors to b minus 7 times b plus 2 equals 0. And then this is going to be b equals 7 and b equals -2. Now, look, do both of these work? Look at the original. If I were to plug in b equals 7, 7 plus 2 is 9, 7 plus 3 is 10. That's fine because it doesn't make it equal to 0. So that's a good answer. But look at -2. If I plug -2 into here, -2 plus 2 is 0. I cannot divide by 0. That's a bad answer. So b equals 7 would be your only one. All right? Okay, you guys, if you want to try 17 and 18, that's fine. But the one on your quiz looks more like 15 or 16. Okay? So go over that. Come with questions in class tomorrow. I can give you more problems to practice on. All right? Have a good night.